Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everybody. I appreciate you all joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Israel. I am a partner in Foley Lardner's New York City office, one of Foley's 21 offices across the U.S., 24 globally. We have about 1,200 attorneys practicing in this firm across a broad range of disciplines that you would expect to find in a general service law firm of this size. And this firm has a long history. We've been at it for more than 175 years, and our sports and entertainment group has been around for a while. I'm not sure it's 175 years, but we have been around a while. And with Kevin Schulz, who's also on this video call, I co-chair our sports and entertainment group, which is a multidisciplinary group of lawyers with a very deep and broad experience in sports and entertainment. I myself spent 7 years as an in-house lawyer at the NBA League office, and there are a number of us in the group who have spent time as in-house counsel at various professional sports organizations and companies. So we like to say, as outside lawyers, we bring a unique insider's perspective to the work we do. And we have been watching and working with minor league baseball and various teams over the years. So we have been really following closely the challenges that you all have faced these past few years. We were excited to put this program together and have a chance to hear directly from you what's going on, what issues you faced, what challenges you faced, and hopefully look forward with a lot of optimism with what's ahead. And so I'm not going to take much more time. I want to turn this program over to my Foley partner, Bob Dupay, who needs no introduction, especially among baseball circles. In addition to all he's done in the world of baseball, Bob really laid the foundation for our sports and entertainment group here at Foley & Lardner and helped us build it into what it is today. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you and hearing your stories and experiences. And Bob, over to you.
Thank you, John, very much. And let me add my welcome to all of you to the program. I hope that we have a very broad and helpful discussion. I want to congratulate all of you on dealing with the past 2 years. I mean, first, obviously, dealing with the COVID issues that cost you last season and have been ongoing, and in dealing with the reorganization of minor league baseball. I am very glad that you had a season this year, and for those of you who still have games remaining, I wish you well with those games as well. I wanted to offer just a couple of my own personal perceptions from my 34 years around professional baseball. I have long believed that outside of the cities in which you play, minor league baseball has been baseball's best kept secret and the foundation, frankly, for the sport's success. I mean, the idea that you have drawn 40 million fans year after year in then 160, now a fewer number of cities is truly remarkable. And to provide affordable family entertainment throughout the entire summer in those communities, to be part of those communities and to be part of Americana and part of American history, and particularly American sports history, is just truly terrific. And most importantly, you make fans of the game. If someone sees a player in one of your teams go up to the major leagues, they follow those players through their entire career, and it's what drives, frankly, the overall popularity of the sport and the national ratings during the Jewel events and the playoffs. And it's all because of what you have done historically in your communities. When I got back from Vietnam, I got married, and we had 5 months down at Fort Lee, Virginia, and we used to go to Richmond Braves games. They drew about 1,500 people at those games back then. But the year we went, Ralph Garr, Dusty Baker, Darrell Evans all played for the Richmond Braves. And even though I was not a Braves fan, I followed their careers throughout their careers. And that's what all of your fans do, and it's what makes the game so great. So let's get the discussion going. I was privileged to have a very good relationship with Mike Moore and with Pat O'Connor throughout my tenure at baseball. And while I did not always agree with them, and maybe you didn't always agree with them either, there is absolutely no question that first and foremost was your collective interest. That was what was at the top of both of their agendas. And without that organization, we thought putting together, this call and discussion made some sense so that you could focus on moving forward and collective issues that you might be facing. And we're lucky to have Rick Horrow with us. Rick also needs no introduction. I think all of you, or most of you, certainly know him. He has been a sports entrepreneur. He has been an author. He has been a media celebrity, and he has been helping us over the last year on putting together programs dealing with the comeback of sports from COVID and in our various sports efforts and programs. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Rick. Rick? You're on mute, Rick.
I know that is a gift from God to have me on mute for any considerable time. So I appreciate the introduction, Bob, and thank you all very much for participating in this. It is truly a significant honor to be part of this best practices forum where we talk about a number of different areas of common interest, and hopefully the first of maybe many as we identify, along with others who want to see minor league baseball not only survive but thrive. Coming into the pandemic, 81% of the U.S. population lives in a market with at least one minor league baseball club. A total of 41.5 million people during that year passed through the gates of minor league baseball teams. 15th consecutive season that the clubs drew more than 40 million fans, and also a 2% increase in attendance year over year on a continual basis. The average price of a family of four for a ticket, $69. 2 tickets, 2 children's tickets, 4 hot dogs, 2 sodas, and 2 beers. That can't happen anywhere in America. And since 2000, Major League Baseball, minor league baseball opened up 68 new ballparks, completed 94 since the beginning of 1990, and completed 132, and renovated 94. We'll get into that on the stadium side. The point is the statistics were better than ever, clearly. Then we had a historic stoppage that impacted minor league baseball probably like none other, because such a crowd-dependent business model, to have no crowds able to attend for a year. At the time the agreement was set to expire, at the time of rampant uncertainty, it was truly a perfect storm. Minor league baseball has met significant challenges, and I think you could say rebounding. We're at the end of a first year under the new developmental structure. And one of the things that's important to us is for us to get some honest best practices feedback and dialogue going with some key folks in the industry and others on the line, including some of the Foley attorneys we've talked about, John and Kevin and Andy Lee and Mike Wall, and obviously Bob Dupay. We have Jenna Burns, the senior vice president of the Oklahoma City Dodgers, Sam Burnaby, the president of the Iowa Cubs, Kem Miner, the EVP and general counsel of the Worcester Red Sox, Ken Young, the president of the Norfolk Tides Albuquerque Isotopes, Ken Babby, owner and CEO of the Akron Rubber Ducks and Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, and others in the audience who will add some perspective to this. So the way we want to proceed, we will look at, let's say, 5 buckets: new or renovated facilities, community integration and support, sponsorship, marketing, ticketing, traditional media, new media, and then COVID and the grab bag of how generally minor league baseball is doing and some suggestions on process and moving forward. We'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes in each of these, and some of the kitchen cabinet I described earlier will be asked to kind of lead the initial thoughts in each of the discussions. Please feel free to raise your hand, throw things at the computer, text us, do whatever you want to get our attention, because this will be intentionally an incredibly informal and hopefully very productive session. All right, let's get started. And we'll get started with the new or renovated facilities section. And I think it's important to understand, just to set the stage again, let me re-say it correctly. Since 1990, 132 minor league ballparks done, 94 renovations, nearly 60 to 70% public money. And the important to that piece is that these facilities also universally recognized as components of community infrastructure. We're going to hear that a lot. Critical to a region's growth, just like libraries and convention centers and museums, transportation, infrastructure, and the like. And obviously, with the pandemic front and center as well, just like Yankee Stadium was partially done in the late teens and early 20s, 100 years ago, to help us recover from the worldwide Spanish flu epidemic with public money spent on it. We should learn from that history. And somebody who is eminently qualified to kick off that discussion, Kim Miner, given the success of Polar Park and Worcester with Larry Lucchino, et cetera. So Kim, what's your general 30,000-foot view on facilities from your own Polar Park experience? And importantly as well, what lessons can we learn from what facilities mean to the surrounding community and how it can be called infrastructure, especially with that Relief Act opportunity lying out there for some potential for public dollars?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. And it's nice to talk to everybody. I would also invite anyone out to Polar Park. If you're in the Massachusetts area, we'd love to show you our new park. We're very proud of it. And it was certainly an adventure getting it completed. We did have to stop construction for about 7 weeks last year during COVID. We sort of opened different parts of the ballpark on a rolling basis throughout our season, with the last piece of the ballpark opening on the last home game of the season. So, you know, in typical minor league baseball fashion, we really sort of went with it. But I think that there are probably a number of lessons to be learned from our experience. For those who don't know, we moved from our longtime home in Pawtucket, Rhode Island to Worcester, Massachusetts. And so, Rick, to your question about infrastructure and the value of these ballparks, we had a lot of conversations both in Rhode Island and later in Massachusetts with members of the public and legislature about the intrinsic value that these ballparks provide. We did 11 public hearings in Rhode Island on this exact topic. And you know, the high level view of it is that I think minor league baseball, and we all know this, is different from Major League Baseball in this one particular area in a very real way. And that a lot of the reason that we can get so much public funding for these ballparks is largely because there is real value that these municipalities see from these ballparks. And even during COVID, even given what has transpired over the past couple of years, we built a new ballpark, approximately $120 million ballpark here in Worcester. And during the pandemic, tens and tens of millions of dollars have been invested in the immediate area around our ballpark. And, you know, a number of developers have very clearly said that they were only coming there because of us, because of the pedestrian activity, the media attention, the number of folks that we were bringing in for baseball games and other events to the immediate area. And so it really can't be denied, that sort of piece of it. I also think that we all probably witnessed how in the last year or so, minor league baseball has been such a big part of helping communities get back on their feet. I know we all do a lot of community things, but we also all use our ballparks for a variety of uses. We did a number of vaccination clinics at our ballpark when we reopened. It was sort of one of the first ways that people had come together in over a year. Our ballparks are outside, so in many ways we were a safer environment for people to congregate again. So for us, we've seen all of the value that we were explaining to the state of Rhode Island and then to Massachusetts that we brought. I think the past year has really illustrated that, and it's been satisfying for us to see that. And I think for the city, if you were to ask the city of Worcester or the state of Massachusetts if they regretted their support or how they felt after the first year, I feel very confident that they would say they were, thought it was well worth it and that they got a great return on their investment. And, I think we're confident that that will continue to be the case. So I think we're all as a market in a pretty good position to make that case. And especially in states like Massachusetts, where public funding for some of these facilities is pretty hard to come by.
So just to follow up on that, and anybody kind of join in on it, and Kim, you set a great outline of not only the Paw Sox, but also the Woo Sox, but also the opportunities for the vaccinations, the community stuff, all the stuff that happens in that ballpark. Obviously, we know that. As we're looking at the infrastructure opportunities trickling down, not only the Relief Act, but otherwise, there's a lot of discussion about using some dollars to either be a catalyst for development or renovation, to make the facility bigger, safer, more responsive, roads into a stadium, parking, community development, residential development. To me, the definition of infrastructure is a case-by-case opportunity for whatever city can be most creative based on whatever the public needs are in that state. So, Kim, you can comment on that generally, and anybody else kind of join on where we think we are in using this opportunity to inspire some additional public money as we move forward.
Sure. I think you're right on the creativity point. For us, the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has a strict policy that they won't put money into ballparks, but what they will put money into is infrastructure. And so they funded a large parking garage that's across the street. They also are improving, they granted, I think, $15 million worth of public works funding for the city of Worcester to redo all of the streets near our ballpark. They also, because of our ballpark's presence, finally redid an 11-way intersection called Kelly Square in Worcester, which was the most dangerous intersection in all of the state and had been that way for many decades. You took your own life into your hands when you drove through it, and it stayed that way until we built our ballpark and they redid it into a larger rotary that I think is a lot safer. I forget how many tens of millions of dollars that took, but I think the state would tell you they wouldn't have done that, at least not as quickly as they did, if not for our ballpark. So I think that, the whole development project coming together provides the impetus that's often needed to do some of these projects that everyone long knew about, but maybe didn't start acting on. So I certainly think that is part of it. And I also think that minor league baseball teams and the presence of them requires cities and states to look at their infrastructure and see what's lacking. For us, we're working on better commuter rail opportunities, public bus opportunities, things that, again, no one's going to do just for a minor league baseball team. But if our presence can help to prompt a discussion about, how is public transportation around the city? What's access like from all areas? Fully 360 degrees. Those are discussions that help our business, but also I think are good for the city and the state and are often why they are willing to put in some money to help with those things.
Those of us who've driven around Massachusetts understand that Kim Miner is not kidding about an 11-way intersection. They exist. And that's one of the advantages, is to clean up traffic around facilities. Those of you who want to chime in as well, Because when you look at the number, and not just the number, but the kinds of facilities that have had new ballpark construction recently, anywhere from your area to Vegas, big cities, Kannapolis, North Carolina, Madison, Alabama, Fredericksburg, Virginia, Beloit, Wisconsin, everything in between. I know, Ken, you have a hand up, and I guess part of the issue too is we ought to make sure we have a best practices matrix going as a to-do list for this, where everybody ought to share economic impact studies. Maybe that's a good way to deal with getting information to people that can help make their arguments in the future. Ken, what do you got?
Well, I think the key is right now with Major League Baseball having the demands, if you want to call it that, for the improvements in ballparks, especially to player areas and other areas. It's a perfect time, and we've already sat down with many of our lessors, which are governmental agencies, but a perfect time to not only get those improvements, but get a lot of other improvements, because it's great to be able to talk with those politicians or city managers, and they can see how valuable we are. They already know that to some extent, but we can push that and get even more. So I do look at what MLB is desiring for us to provide to them as a positive point, and I think we can all take advantage of that.
And it's an important thing to note and to highlight here for another perspective, and maybe we're saying it in different ways. When you go to the public sectors, everybody listening, and you make the argument that there is a need for infrastructure, public-private partnership help, this is not an ultimatum that is created by a team owner that says, do this or else. These are standards that are imposed through an agreement that is now in force that Major League Baseball needs to do for player safety and player training and everybody else. And so it's not something that you have a whole lot of discretion over. It's an opportunity to say, here's what we need. Here's what we think we can help you with. What kind of public funding do you think you have? Here's some economic impact studies and best practices from all over the country. And here are some case study templates that can work. We ought to work together to figure out how to get that done, because candidly, and everybody on this call knows, we were kind of in the middle of that in the, quote, old administrations, trying to help put that together before circumstances changed. Sam's got his hand up, and then Kim, I see you agreeing, so we can talk about that too. But Sam, is that our Sam or is that another Sam?
No, that's me. I'm first of all, I want to say hello to all my friends and colleagues that are on the call, and appreciate you getting on. And by the way, Rule 4 is in effect, those of you that know what Rule 4 is. As far as this conversation goes, you know, minor league baseball is probably in its third renaissance with the rubric that we're dealing with our friends in New York now under the Major League Baseball guys. And you know, the first renaissance was basically minor league baseball taking on debt and getting into the minor league business, owners that own teams in the late 70s, early 80s, taking teams away from and off the hands of the major league clubs. The second renaissance is probably more pertinent to this conversation, and that's really the facility standards that were created in 1990 with the new structure of the PBA and the way things set up. The mistake we made is we hung our hat on those facility standards for too long and didn't make enough adjustments. But that takes us now to the third renaissance that I think you're going to see in a lot of cases. Probably not to the extent of Worcester, but certainly there'll be new ballparks that come with it. But lots and lots of renovation, lots and lots of plus money spent, not only in player development, but also development around your stadium and fan experiences. I think this is a great opportunity to move our industry at the minor league level to the next level. We've sat on it too long, and I think those of you that remember the 1990 rule standards that were created, we all kind of held our breath at that point as well, saying, you know, what the heck are we going to do with a ballpark in Des Moines, Iowa that was built in 1947 that can't accommodate more than 4,000 people, and somehow we all seem to get it done. I think, Rick, you quoted 132 ballparks over the years. Frankly, I think it's even more than that relative to out of the possible 160. At one point, there was 150 50 of them that had some major project going. So I think this is a nice opportunity for that third renaissance of activity relative to how stadiums work and how money is spent.
Kim, did you want to add something?
I would just, to Sam, your point there, I think that we certainly saw at McCoy Stadium in Rhode Island what it looks like, you know, sort of to do big renovations every 20 or 30 or 40 years and not a whole lot, or maybe not as much as you would like in the interim. And a lot of that has to do with public funding you can get. But one of the things that I think the new system will require of all of us, if not strictly is just sort of on a practical basis, is coming up with better maintenance and capital plans and working with our municipal partners. And Rick, kind of as you're saying, to point the finger at MLB and say, hey, in order to keep our affiliation, we need to meet certain standards, and we'd rather get ahead of that with you because the expenses get bigger the longer we put things off, which again, we saw at McCoy. So let's put in a capital plan where every few years we're doing an assessment, where we're doing projects every year, every off season. You know, I know a lot of teams already do that and some don't, but for us, I think that the new facility standards have prompted a discussion with our landlord already, our first year in operation, to say, hey, let's plan out what we're going to do over the next 10 years to preempt problems, to keep costs down, so we never get into a situation where we have to do a big overhaul or risk our affiliation, because that's obviously the last situation you want to be in.
So May 11, Bob Cousy, James Taylor, and a few other luminaries accompany Larry Lucchino out to throw the first ball out at Polar Park. What Kim is saying is by May 12, there are standards that are saying, we better start working on stuff at the ballpark. So my comment before we leave this area, and any of the lawyers on this side can disagree, I think would be a good thing, is best practices and shared information now is more important than anything. This is not a zero-sum game among 120 minor league teams relative to who builds the best facility. Everybody has leases that are expiring at X time, some longer than others, and everybody also is now finding some new victories relative to what might be public assistance, some with traffic lights, some with 11 intersection bottlenecks, some with opportunities for Wi-Fi service that ties into the emergency broadcast system and disaster relief. Public money is all fungible. If dollars come in on one side, it benefits everybody. So I would propose that one of the to-do steps from this kind of meeting is an ongoing kind of action process to say, here is what this particular facility and owner found. It may not be applicable to everybody, but it's applicable to some, and use that shared information, because shared knowledge in this context is power. What do we all think? Good. Okay.
Rick, I'll just say I wholeheartedly agree. And from our experience, we had no trouble when we asked our peers for information and to share data with us. Everyone's been so cooperative, but you do have to go out and ask for it. So to the extent anyone is interested in creating some sort of database or sharing information on sort of a more regular basis, count us in. And I think it's certainly in the spirit of minor league baseball to do so.
Good. Okay.
I think, Rick, there's one other point here that I just want to make, and that is that Peter Woodfork and other people from MLB are willing to not only help us, but be the ones that really push. So we, as let's say local people, don't need to be the ones that at least initially get into this debate with our lessors and seem like the fall guy to the community. We can let MLB do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. One more comment before we move to the next bucket. I see Alan with a hand up. Is there an Alan?
Hey guys, how are you? Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you guys are at. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, so question. So here in Eugene, we are in the process of trying to build a new stadium. We share a facility with the University of Oregon. It's a beautiful stadium. However, going from short season to high A baseball certainly presents a challenge for us. Fortunately, we've got a great reputation in town, and we've been able to really get some great conversations with locals. Wondering with Kim on your stadium build, did you happen to utilize any hotel tax dollars? Were you able to use any EDA money from the government? I know there's a lot of talk here about federal dollars that are out there, but nobody seems to know how to get them. So the dollars have been allocated, but that's what I want to know. There is a lot of federal money out there. What is the best avenue to reach? I understand the infrastructure part of it, and some of the issues facing us here in Eugene is there's the homelessness issue, which is top of mind for everybody. They seem to battle that more than anything. And so how do I battle? Obviously the stadium will create jobs, will bring more full-year equivalents to the community. We've done economic impact studies, a couple of them already. We've got a great story. We've got a couple sites selected, but the question now comes down to funding. And so we are, coming in with a big bucket of money, but also are looking to see. I would love to hear more about this, community or, sharing ideas of how to get federal dollars, because I think this is a unique opportunity where there are a ton of federal dollars out there, and just trying to figure out the best way to, grab some of it.
And Bob DuPay and Kevin and John, I think what it proves is that there are people out there who would like this information. Alan, I know you have the contact information. What we'd like to do probably is get back to you and see if we can provide some of the information that's already been done and then kind of move on. Was out in your neck of the woods last week. Eugene is an incredible city, and it would be a great place to have another facility as well. So let us end this bucket, Alan, by saying we'll get back to you on that, and I'm sure there will be other people as we follow through on this post roundtable who will want to hear more about common interests relative to facility development as well. Okay, so Alan, thank you. Kim, thank you for describing the 11 intersection bottleneck in Worcester, and we'll be there for throwing the ball out in season 2. Thanks very much. So, all right, the next bucket is effectively called community integration and support. And it's a broader and somewhat related component to what we just talked about. We understand that minor league baseball teams and their facilities are vital components of their community because they provide affordable, fan-friendly entertainment. They support scores of local businesses. We have stats that we found from the 2019 minor league baseball community impact report that talked about over $50 million generated for local charities, which is obviously important because these are minor league teams. This is not, major league, and it's big and it's really important. The folks that donate millions of dollars and thousands of hours to local charities, also the jobs created, we all understand that. But to get behind it a little bit, we have two sets of expertise. One, Sam Burnaby, who has been the president of the Iowa Cubs for 130 years. Sam, how long?
Yeah, it's been a bunch, Rick. That's for sure.
Right.
This is the 38th season I just finished, so it
Yeah,
feels like 30 sometimes.
I wanted to take advantage of that before you hopped on your unmute button, and then we'll get to Ken Babby in a minute, who has some unique expertise regarding two cities that he's in the middle of, Jacksonville and Akron. Sam, let me just start with you. 32, I'm always flip with you. We have a great relationship, but you are Des Moines. I mean, it's just the Iowa Cubs are a focal point. It's an incredible success story, not just because the parent Cubs are located near and you have a great relationship with the Ricketts family and the Cubs and before that, but also give me some idea of how you integrate with your business community, your local, your political community. I know it's tied to facility renovation, but it's much more than that. So give me a snapshot on best practices from your perspective.
Well, I don't think we do anything magical, Rick. Everybody that's on this call listening is in the same boat, doing the same things. It's it's not a secret that we have to be all things to all people throughout the community, whether it's city government or county government or state government, whether it's your corporate sponsors, the big boys that spend all the money, or the mom and pops that spend a little bit of money. You have to treat everybody the same. And there isn't anybody, and looking at the roster of people on this call, lots of longtime friends and colleagues, they're all doing the same thing. It's so important to make sure that you're the community entity, I think, and it starts with a couple of things. One, I think safe, clean, and fun that's our business model. That's our business motto. And if it's not safe and it's not clean, then it's not you don't have to worry about it being fun, because they're not coming anyway. And so then you have to translate that over to everybody that has anything to do with your operation, whether it's a charity or whether it's a governmental entity that's going to support you with public funds, or whoever it may be. And so we work really hard at that and coddle that. And then the other thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and maybe we don't get enough credit for throughout the industry, but I think it's consistency. We concentrate on consistency with everything and everybody. You know what you're going to get when you pull into the parking lot from the time you pull in to the time you leave, and it's consistency in timing, and it's a consistency in pricing, and it's consistency in the business model and the way you do business day in and day out. And I think that's so important when it comes to how you look in the community. You don't bounce all over the place with different marketing techniques or different pricing levels. You try to keep your game times all the same to make it easy for your fans, and then spend your time in and out of those corporate offices, making sure that those fellows and ladies that corporately that are spending all kinds of money with you know that they know what they're going to get from an exposure standpoint. And so we really concentrate on consistency and trying to make it work on a day in and day out basis, on a year after year basis. And fortunately, after 38 years, they still pay me once every 2 weeks, and so I like that consistency, frankly.
Yeah, well, you're good at a whole bunch of consistencies, including getting a regular paycheck, and that nobody's going to deny that. You deserve it. What do you think? And consistency is another way to approach this question. It's been an amazing sea change. The names of the leagues, the names of the divisions, the structures, the affiliations. It hadn't affected you and the Des Moines Cubs, Iowa Cubs, though it's affected everybody around you. Do you detect that the communities, the fans, the business communities care one way or another about the new setup? How are you taking advantage of the new setup? It is what it is, and where do we go from here?
Well, the diehard fans, the ones that I don't know, the 10% that come every single night, that know every name of every player and their background, and I also list them as my biggest critics. They're the ones that are here evaluating me every move we make. They noticed and they understand that there was change, and that we're not in the Pacific Coast League anymore. We're in the AAA East, and we're playing a whole different set of teams, and the format is different, and they recognize that. They're not stupid by any means, and as much as they follow it, that it was an easy follow for them to know and understand what was happening. As far as everybody else goes, 90% of it, I just don't think it mattered. There were a lot more things pressing relative to fandom and the way people attended our games and events, and the change from minor league baseball to a PDL league, and the change from St. Pete to New York. Nobody cared. I didn't see it. I haven't seen it yet. And I think that's partly a credit to my staff as well, as we didn't make it appear like anything had changed. It's the business as usual, and we tried to exude that a lot whatever we were doing. And again, back to consistency. We didn't do anything different this year than we did in 2019, aside from the pandemic protocols that we were dealing with on a day in and day out basis. But our 90% of our fans wouldn't have known the difference one way or the other, I don't believe.
So the beauty of what we're talking about here is that and we'll shift over and stay ready for some follow-up, Sam, as well. The idea of Jacksonville and Akron as two markets that are, one is in the shadow of Cleveland, although Ken would say it's a separate market, obviously, and another one is a mid-size market of Jacksonville. But the beauty of these questions is it impacts the Vegases, the Memphises, the Charlottes, the big cities that are quote unquote ready for next steps, as well as Beloit and Jupiter, Florida, and otherwise. So Ken, get on for a second and give us some perspective on kind of the common interests of community integration, not only between the two markets that you're dealing with, but between all of the markets we're talking about. Are there best practice opportunities that we can learn from your experience?
Well, thanks, Rick. And it was interesting. I was just kind of scrolling through the participants, and so many of the folks on today's webinar, are, in my opinion, sort of the best of the best that are in this space that we learn from. So I'll answer this from our perspective in Jacksonville and Akron, but I think you've got a lot of folks that are truly best in class leaders in our space and in our industry, who I have the highest of respect for on today's call. It's interesting. I say often to our staff, businesses just in general are either needed or loved. And when I think about that, you think about sort of your interactions as a customer across, where you spend your discretionary income. There's certain businesses that we just got to pay the bills every month, right? We have to pay our house utility bill. We've got to pay our cell phone bill. We got to pay a cable provider. And now we're paying for all these streaming services so my son can be on Netflix and Hulu and every other Disney Plus, every other imaginable streaming format. But there are other businesses that I would say that aren't needed, and customers at a chance have to make a vote every day as to whether or not they want to continue to support those businesses and how important they are to their community. And I actually think the pandemic really brought a great sort of fork in the road to this question of which businesses are needed and which businesses are loved. And our business, frankly, is loved. Nobody has to go to a ballpark on a Thursday night or Friday night. Nobody has to choose to go there versus, as we know, going to the movies or going, in a market like Jacksonville out to the beach or in a market like Akron, concerts or shows or other arts and entertainment events. There's just sort of a plethora of opportunities. And so to be loved, I think, requires us to develop a relationship within our communities with our fans in a way that's very personal and very experiential. We are truly in the business of delivering experiences for people. Last I've checked, nobody has gone home crying at night on a night where the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp lost a game 4-3. They may be thrilled when we win, but at the end of the day, it's about the experience that they have when they're in our ballparks. Very different at the major league level when it really is all about winning, and then fan experience becomes secondary. But I really do believe that to position ourselves post-pandemic as a business that our communities love versus needed is a very helpful construct. And with that, I think guides us as owners and leaders of teams to develop experiences and, frankly, to develop our set of products and services for our customers in a way that's aligned with a loved business versus one you sort of begrudgingly pay the bill every month on.
One question as a follow-up regarding how the communities will love you, because you want the communities to love you in many different ways. And one of the kind of post-pandemic arguments that I've heard in front of economic development organizations and chambers of commerce and politicians is one of the best ways to recover historically as well is to rally around common good and to feel good about things. And sport, we've been away too long. Now we've got crowds back. We'll talk about COVID and attendees later, but the value of sports coming back in a community hopefully gives somebody an opportunity to be even more bullish about a team in a community. And maybe there are some messages that can be shared around the business leaders who happen to own teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting kind of coming in and out of the ballpark and traveling through both Jacksonville and Akron throughout the season. One common thread you just continued to be heard over and over again, and I'm sure everybody on this call was thrilled to hear this, was we missed you, and that was nice. It's nice sometimes to be missed after going through what we went through last year. It was great to see those faces once fans were allowed to pull down their masks. It was great to see, despite the labor challenges that all of us had at the concessions, it was great to see, fans coming back and having those extreme menu items and enjoying a night at the ballpark, and our crowds, throughout the season in both markets. And I think, as everybody would agree, despite the challenges of not having the kind of group numbers and picnics and corporate hospitality, at a mass level that we might have dreamed to have or that we had in 19, our fans were back in 2021. And that was a very much a reflection of the fact that, one, they missed us, and two, there's great value in what we're delivering. And back to my earlier point, that we're providing a service that's genuinely loved and part of the fabric of the community. On a Friday night in Akron, Ohio, on Main Street, this is the hottest thing in the community, and we're very, very proud of that, and we'll continue to refine it and make it better for years and years to come.
So I'm not going to ask you this question because it'd be a terrible thing to ask online, but are we happier for the rubber ducks that the Browns have gotten out of the box hot, or are we happier for the jumbo shrimp that the Jaguars have not?
Yeah, so when people ask what question, I stay in my lane, Rick. I am well trained, but I will tell you that the success of sports in a market only helps us, right? And so that as we see success in our sports complex in Jacksonville, where I am today, it really drives the excitement in the community, and the same thing certainly is true with all the teams up in Northeast Ohio as well. As they have success, we enjoy that as well.
For everybody who didn't know this, the beauty about Ken and his father, Lon, who was a world-class lawyer and leader, they are both astute, sophisticated politicians, and will never fault the answers we ever get. So thanks. We could talk about this community related to stadiums for hours. We've got about 45 minutes or so max, and I want to get into the next bucket, which is Jenna Burns's bucket. Thanks, guys. Sponsorship, marketing, ticketing, broadly defined. We talked about 41 million people passing through the turnstiles, a 2% increase, and 15 years of great attendance 2 years ago. Then the world came to an end. Now we're coming back slowly but surely. Oklahoma City, always an industry leader, even before and after the Thunder. Jenna, give us some perspective on some of your new, personally, or the Dodgers, marketing, sponsorship, ticketing issues. I know you've started a pretty interesting relationship with Kiss Cam, which I know you'll talk about as well. But generally, how are you using promotion and marketing post-pandemic?
Yeah, so we, not unlike probably everybody else on this call, went through some staffing shakeups, and so when our season was not going to take place on June 30th of 2020, we got that announcement, and then moving into what to do with our staff. And we were fortunate enough to get some PPP funding that was great to lead us into that. And then after the announcement on the season, we had to make some challenging decisions. So our sales staff typically was about 16 sales reps, and so we went and we cut some of those team members, and then put a lot on furlough. And so we went into the pandemic having 3 sales team members who really spent some time going through and developing and strengthening relationships with our season ticket holders. So we were able to really use that time for engagement purposes when you're not asking people for money, which is a good thing to be able to do every once in a while. And so then coming out of this, and working into the 2020 season and preparing for that, 2021 season and preparing for that, we had what I felt like were really engaged members of our season ticket base. So for us, that was awesome to lay that very strong foundation. I think Ken referenced, we didn't have the group buyers that we would usually have. We do a lot of group business. On a single game and walk-up buyers. Really hard to sell and get people committed in advance. And so coming into this, there was a pretty extreme uncertainty that like when our season was going to start, when we were going to be able to start having, capacity in stadium. And so people didn't really want to buy in advance. And that was kind of one of the things that we really focused on. So leading in then to this season, we had a lot of work to do on the single game side. So a place that we don't traditionally spend a lot of time. So all of that to say, our marketing team really had to step up their game in the sense of they were more important than ever because of the digital ads, the digital spend, and the way that we were going to go and start moving out of a sales team and person-to-person selling and being able to utilize some of those digital resources.
Did we lose Rick?
I don't know. Either that or he just didn't like what I said.
So great, we lost Rick.
Jenna, I don't know, that look, someone's got to preserve that look. At least on my screen, it's a pretty funny one. And I'm going to jump in because Jen, I had a question that was on my mind, and I don't want to shift gears, but Ken mentioned something to me, and I'm, in the spirit of roundtable discussion here. Ken mentioned something that, as the resident labor and employment lawyer in the Foley sports team, that, well, you sort of mentioned some stuff too in terms of staffing and the difficulties you went through, but even getting back up to speed here, staffing even in a game experience. I'm interested. I have so many clients out there that are struggling to find workers. So, I would take 5 minutes while we get Rick coming back in. I'd love to hear from some of you, and I'm sure others in the group would like to hear your strategies, anyone's strategies for how to find folks to work concessions, work game nights, etc. I'd be really interested.
Yeah, so I'll handle it a little bit as it relates to full-time staff, and then if someone else has had better success with with concessions than we have. But one thing that was really key for us is we tried to take as many team members to furlough instead of layoffs to continue to keep them engaged. That was something that we worked really heavily with our ownership group on to get them kind of on board with how much easier it's going to be to hit the ground running once we get that 2021 schedule than trying to go out and hire and recruit cold. And that was really, important for us. Going through the furlough timeline, we didn't lose any employees. No one opted to go and pursue another opportunity or anything like that. So I was really happy that we were able to get back up to full strength as soon as we were kind of got that green light on the schedule. Anybody have thoughts as it relates to part-time staff or food and beverage?
In Indianapolis, we've done okay on game day staff. We've got a really good cadre of folks who have been ushers and gatemen and ticket takers and ticket sellers for a long time. And actually, with some of the PPP money we got, we were able to throw them a modest amount of it. Going in, we just had really applied for it in terms of our full-time employees, and the way the calendar fell, it kind of made sense to include them. And I don't think that hurt us either when it was time to get going again. The concession has been a little more difficult. There's a pool of people in general who work in concession stands in our market, probably in everybody's market. And we've got two major concert venues that really kicked in once you got into about late June, early July this year. And if the Colts were playing an exhibition game, or there was a big event at the JW Marriott, some of these people, are going to choose to work other places at times. So that's been challenging. The other thing, and that relates to that, sometimes we can't always get our items, which everybody knows too, when it comes to concessions. So the concessions probably was the biggest challenge. Our concessionaire likes to use a lot of nonprofit groups where he can that raise money for their organizations.
Sure.
There's a little bit of a wages war for nonprofit groups. We don't get on the weeds on that, on what they pay them exactly, but I know they're paying them quite a bit more than they were in 2019 because they have options too.
Mm-hmm.
So Bruce, do I understand that you bring in nonprofit groups to sort of sell? Is that how it works? Because I have heard of that setup before, and they get a cut of the concession profit. Is that what you're referring to?
They do. They'll be in charge of a particular stand, and actually they're not beholden on how well that stand does that night. That they get a certain amount, but they're ever so much more conscientious than in the aggregate than people you would just hire from a one ad.
That community-based model is kind of like golf tournaments as well, where I know in Phoenix the Thunderbirds do a lot of the concessions and a lot of the others, and I know in minor league baseball they do also. So, John, did you stand in for me? If you did, that was great. I appreciate it.
It was, the picture was great when you cut out. I'm hoping Christina took a snapshot of that one. I just had a question that followed on from Ken's comments about labor staffing, since I'm a labor and employment lawyer. So I figured I would ask it while you disappeared for a few minutes, but I'm happy to turn the questions and moderating back to you.
All right, good. You're done. Goodbye. No, that was great. Thank you.
John, let me add one more thing though, and this might help us for the future. So a lot of facilities have tried to go cashless or as much cashless as possible. And that takes some improved point of sale systems and so forth. But along with that has increased the tips to employees and to groups substantially. And so what we've done, actually, we've encouraged those tips because it's a way to keep groups happy, maybe bring more people, and certainly to those employees, especially working alcoholic beverage portables and things like that, they want to work every night because the tips have become so much more substantial. So I think that's something that may help us in the future, but there is no question that most nights, and I think most of our venues across the country, in minor leagues and for that matter, major leagues, those venues were short of food service personnel.
And by the way, a best practices tip, the NFL, all stadiums, I think except one, have gone completely cashless with 65 to 70,000 people in them. And the early returns are they're getting a lot more sales. They're getting their money earlier, and the concessionaires seem to like it. So we'll get some data from them and share it with you all, because I know that's pretty significant. Hey, Jenna, final thoughts, and sorry for the obviously interruption, on things that you think are really important promotion and marketing wise to keep people entertained in a facility as you go forward.
Yeah. So I want to answer that. I also have one other thing. So I think on this call, it's really easy to go through and just share people are buying more digitally and things like that, which is we're all kind of experiencing that. But I will share this. We added a position this year as a director of business intelligence. And some of you might have this on your team, some of you may not. But I would share with everyone, this, especially right now, has been a really crucial role for us. It's someone who has a background in ticket sales, really understands our business, but is somebody that we've been able to really lean on as it comes for appropriate data segmentation, data collection. He's trying to build databases and get great leads. And so our sales team is now calling on warm and hot leads as opposed to cold calls. And so that's been a significant shift in kind of their operation. But also someone who's been very helpful as it comes to forecasting and being really strong with projections. And so it allows, a lot of those things you used to have to reside as our VP of ticket sales or someone in the ticket office. And this person can solely focus on that, whereas everyone else is being pulled in multiple directions. So anyway, so I just share that. It's this is our first full season with that role, and it's been really beneficial. And so just to share that as a best practice for folks. Rick, your original question related to entertaining people in stadium is something that I think we all had some challenges with, especially as we weren't able to have field access for the most part. And so especially early on when, getting people involved in the game experience is so important. So we relied a lot on our in-game presentation, video board content, creative videos, figuring out ways to go and engage people. Rick mentioned the folks at KissCam, and that's a platform that we've been working toward to kind of bring a little bit of fun into the ballpark. And usually you do a KissCam, and only people that are on camera get to participate, and so this allows for fun photos and things like that get uploaded and then shared in stadium. It's also a really great data collection point for us, and so that's been really beneficial and really helpful. And also, I think this year above a lot, we have just kind of taken the approach of this is kind of our year that it's our year to try stuff. Usually we have a very specific process and everything has to fit in the way that it, that it works, and we test and retest and all that stuff. And so this year we've had a couple more instances of giving people more flexibility and freedom within their role, that if they have a really great idea and we just think, 2021 is the time to just see if it works. And then when we have more people in stadium next year, it'll either be something that is wildly successful and we continue to build on it, or we scrap it.
Words to live by, and that's a really good comment to kind of end this bucket. Thank you, Jenna. Really appreciate it. Let's talk for a few minutes about traditional media, new media. Ken Young from the Albuquerque and Norfolk experience, but his wealth of experience in all aspects of media deals. It's interesting. The thing that is in common around minor league baseball teams, I think, is that from a media perspective, you're selling stories more than you're selling scores. And so there's a national legacy involved. There are historical, the mascots, the history, the 100 years, combined with a study I think was done by Shane Consulting, Ken, in 19, before the pandemic. So 75% of minor league fans describe in-game attendance as their primary form of engagement. And less than 20% engage online through streaming, highlights, or game day tracking, which I guess is another verification about what minor league baseball has been selling. From that perspective, however, can we change some of that? Are we happy with some of that? Kind of describe where we are as far as media, new media, and minor league baseball.
Thanks, Rick. A few people have mentioned, and we all know it's so true, that we're more a sport of socialization and entertainment than baseball being the overriding factor of things. And so as we look at how we get to people, I've always felt that getting those special stories out there, not necessarily your night before, although I will say it's important if you have still a decent newspaper in your city and online to get those stories as much as possible about being whatever happened the night before. But the special interests are so important, and also trying to get those special stories, those special events going on all of the different social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, obviously long email lists, TikTok, they all have their own demographic. And when we can try to get the special interest stories on those, I think it's something that really helps us. And then we can push those special nights to those people. And as I think most people here know, there are so many different areas, and MLB is working on this also, that we can create certain demographic lists. So we can go right to, on a special night, right to those thousands of people that might be interested in that promotion and so forth. So I think that's important. The other thing that, as far as trying to just get as much media as possible, knowing if you have a local radio sports talk in your area, getting on those shows and getting to know those people so they'll talk about you. Sometimes that isn't easy. In some cities, it is easy. It just depends on who the host is and the relationship you may have with those people. And then the other thing that is extremely important is getting as many of your community projects out into the spotlight and getting either articles or being talked about on the morning television shows. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Kim, about having in Worcester, having the vaccination and so forth in their park and parking lots. We've just come off 6 weeks of providing vaccinations in our ballparks in Albuquerque and other parks too. And we got terrific publicity over that. So just things where people can learn more about you, and it doesn't have to be necessarily baseball related. Those are a few things right now that I think are important for all of us to try to accomplish.
We have the father of BAM. Bob DuPay is the father of many things, but he was the father of BAM at Major League Baseball, and he made the introduction for us. And one of the hardest sells, I think, was to make sure everybody believed in the common goal of content distribution and participation in that. Does that kind of thing, Ken Young, work from a minor league baseball perspective? Does minor league baseball have to go out individually and work out their own media deals that cover certain things and don't cover other things city by city? How do you think the perfect long-term structure is from a media perspective for MiLB?
Well, we certainly do need to go out locally. I mean, that's extremely important locally to sell ourselves and get as much coverage in various areas as possible. But I think right now, MLB is working on some things for MILB that will help us locally on a national basis, if you want to put it that way. I think that that's very, very helpful to us. But the thing is, we need to get the right messages across too. So as we've said a number of times, it's not as much the baseball content as so many of the other areas that we want to get those points across. And, when spouses at home hear certain things and think about their wanting to bring the family to the ballpark, when we can get certain things out, that will help do that. So I think that it's a combination, Rick, of all those things. But locally, we really need to hit on that.
So whether you're in Jupiter, Florida, or Eugene, Oregon, or Charlotte, just to give you a difference, and in your AAA markets, the Albuquerques and the Norfolks, there is a set of common issues, the focusing on the stories, the mascots, the history, the legacy, a little less than the scores. There's a whole set of common content themes that transcend classification and market size?
Oh, I think I got to tell you, I think it does transcend classification. I mean, obviously, the AAA clubs are in bigger markets most of the time, but the fact is, the interest is still in most communities similar in that they're looking for an experience, a social experience one to get out with friends and family, and that is common across the country with all of my teams. That's one of the things that certainly is in common. You may get some cities where the fans are maybe a little bit more into the baseball and so forth, but even then, it's a smaller percentage compared to those looking for the whole socialization side of things. I would say that's very common throughout the minor leagues, regardless of classification.
Take your Ken Young crystal ball media predictor and answer me whether you think over the next few years we're going to have all minor league baseball games streamed, since apparently everybody is streaming everything, and how do you monetize it?
Well, I do think, especially, I think most games will be streamed. There are some maybe that won't have the cameras and so forth, but certainly at AAA, all of us have the cameras at this point that are needed, and most at AA also, and all but a handful probably at single A. So I do think that will be the case. The monetizing of it, which has always been extremely difficult for us, I think comes down to trying to create that interest of other special things going on at a game. I don't think we'll be able to easily monetize it until we can convince people that they may by watching see some other things, or certainly, and this is easy to do these days, trying to do something in the way of a contest, not gambling, but in the way of contests to generate people's interest too, so they know if they're watching that game, there's something they may be able to click, which can either get them some recognition or win something, just making it fun.
So somebody in the audience speak up on this one. Maybe our Eugene guest or a small market person. Will you speak up and give us a minute on, do you think your challenges of getting media monetization, media help, content help are so significant because you're in such a small market, or do you think that it is an opportunity to combine forces with the history, tradition, and legacy of minor league baseball broadly defined to make content pretty compelling, even though a lot of that content may be stories outside of your market? Is there somebody out there that wants to comment on that who represents a really small market?
For us here in Eugene, we tend to take a very hyper-local approach. You know, we just find that being in the market that we are, anything that we can do locally really is the best driver for us. There's not, you know, we've done a lot of national things, especially with being a high A affiliate this year with the San Francisco Giants, as opposed to being short season that, yeah, we're getting some higher profile players coming in, prospects that are a little bit well known nationally, but in our market, to be honest, those sorts of stories, those sorts of profiles don't necessarily move the needle as much as we would like. So everything that we do really is locally and community based here. We had Marco Luciano come through with the Giants, who's like their, you know, one of their top prospects, very well known nationally, but here in Eugene, you know, there wasn't necessarily that response. We don't have a very, like, I guess the term more would be like a baseball nerd type fan base, and we just don't really have that here in Eugene. So it's definitely more community focused. All the efforts that we're doing, focusing more on the promotions and theme nights and good that we do, as opposed to too much focus on any sort of, you know, nationally based players or bigger national stories, that sort of thing.
Got it. And one of the things I think, just to sum up this bucket, Ken, is that you know, you're sketching out the fact that Major League Baseball has some ideas of helping, the idea of some commonality among stories and national legacy, not focused on individual scores, is important, but a lot of it is the local markets, to get out there and use the local markets, but the media support has to be there to see what complementary angles from a national perspective there might be for each local owner to deal with all of this. Ken, thanks a lot. Really appreciate your perspective on this. What I'd like to do in the next 11 and a half minutes, or maybe a little more, is to ask each of our kitchen cabinet guys from Kim on, just give us a minute or two about, first of all, how you all are dealing with COVID coming out the other end. What are the kind of one or two big things you've learned and the challenges that lie ahead? So it's kind of a summary of where we've been and where we're going. Kim Miner, you're up.
Sure, happy to start. Well, I guess coming out of COVID, well, I don't know if we're out of it yet, but coming hopefully to a slightly better place with COVID. We've experienced a lot of the things that Jenna and others were talking about, where we actually did okay with our full-time staff. I think we were fine there. We didn't have had a harder time with our seasonal employees, but even then, for us, the excitement of being in a new market, I think, certainly helped. One thing I'll share, we put into place a vaccine mandate for our employees that took effect a couple of weeks ago, and was thrilled that there was minimal pushback for us. We lost very few employees as a result of it. And I think it helped with morale in terms of people feeling a little bit safer at the ballpark. So some of those types of things, are constantly changing, but have brought the organization together in a lot of ways. The vaccine clinics, I know Ken mentioned, were incredibly rewarding to do. So, COVID has been tough. But trying to find some bright spots where we can, and also take advantage of the fact that as having a ballpark, you can host a lot of outdoor events. A lot of our events going into the fall, as Delta continues to be an issue, is, we're moving events outside from some of our indoor conference spaces to outdoor group areas. And we're really glad that we built a lot of group areas in our ballpark. So a lot of flexibility on that end too. And also a lot of coordination for us with our big league affiliate. Since we're in the same state, we talk to the Red Sox about what they're doing for COVID policies and try to stay in lockstep. In terms of some of the things I've learned, I would just say that in a time of a lot of change with, again, COVID, but for us also moving states, creating a new ballpark, having an almost entirely new corporate partnership base, it underscored what I think those who have been in minor league baseball a lot longer than I have already know, which is that this is very much an industry based on relationships, and that getting through COVID and dealing with sponsor impacts and limited capacity, dealing with all the changes going on, my job as the team's executive vice president and lawyer is to enforce what our contracts say and protect the team. But at the same time, we hope that it never comes to that and we can resolve things because we have good long-term relationships with our partners. And I've found, just anecdotally for our club in the past year, that we have a lot of really strong relationships, perhaps even stronger than I realized. And I think that that is one of the assets that minor league baseballs in particular has, and that is probably something of value that Major League Baseball sees. And my hope is that they don't interfere too much so that we can continue to keep those relationships.
Kim, thank you very much as always. Sam, talk a little bit about your challenges, COVID, predict ahead for you and the Iowa Cubs in the next 36 years, drawing from your experience from the previous 36.
Well, I don't think, I guess I always thought weather was always my greatest fear of whatever would happen in my ballpark. And it's turned out that my locker room has only been less than half vaccinated the entire year. And now I got to worry about how the tests come back and whether or not we're going to be able to play games, whether it's in my park or when we're on the road at a visiting team. There seems to be way more anxiety for that this year than anything. Like I said, I wasn't sure that the weather could be superseded by any of that. But, if we've learned any lessons, it's the lessons I've learned, even though I've emphasized sales and group sales and premium seating and all that we do on a yearly and daily basis to make our business work. It's even more emphasized now with an understanding what we couldn't do and not being able to start the season till literally after the 1st of June when we weren't sure what we were going to have for seating. May was just kind of a throw in, take 25% and do the best you can. But without having those sales, it's really become extremely important is an emphasis of all of our operations. I think there wouldn't be anybody on this call listening that would disagree that everything we're missing right now is our ability to sell groups and premium seating, and some have done better than others, but I think we're all kind of in that same boat. And moving forward, that's the future of our businesses, to continue to provide quality premium, variety of premium seating, and then be creative as we can relative to the groups and how that goes. And frankly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there's been a lot of people talking about relationships and how quality relationships really make our business run. And I realized that even more when we lost a close friend to COVID last summer in Lou Swackheimer, and how much I count on all of these people that are on this call right now and those relationships that we've built over the years.
Sam, it's a great perspective too, and hopefully this goes a long way toward continuing that kind of relationship. We like to play our part in any way we can, so that's great. Ken, give us your perspective, not only in two markets, but kind of the future of minor league baseball as you see it.
I'm obviously pretty bullish on the future of our industry for the reasons that I described earlier, in terms of the importance of our community sort of expressing in many ways a return towards great affordable family entertainment, and the notion that these businesses are loved, and it's our job to continue to strive to make our experience better and better every year. I don't think any of us should, nor have we sort of sat back and said, all right, well, we got back up on our feet in 21. We're just going to put our feet up and hope things get back to normal in 22. One lesson certainly that I learned is to stop trying to look into a crystal ball and predict the future. We had, going into 2021, something like 30 to 35 budget scenarios. And even once the season started, it turned out all 35 of them were wrong. And so we didn't know how many games we were playing. We didn't know the capacity we were in front of. We didn't know the mask policies. There was so much unknown that it just made the prediction of the future almost impossible. Yet we, still tried to do it, and we'll do it again. And so I for one am really bullish on the future of the industry. I'm also incredibly bullish on 2022 as I watch these NFL games, as I hope many of you have, seeing these totally packed stadiums again at the NFL level across the country. I think will result in companies being comfortable restarting picnics and group events and booking those kinds of things that we just weren't able to do in 21. And so as you see more of that, that gives me the strong indication that the world really will be back to the way that we knew it from a group and hospitality standpoint in 22. And I'm just hopeful that our labor issues as a country and in a lot of these communities, certainly in Northeast Ohio and in Northeast Florida, that continued to plague us all year long, will improve for next year.
Very well put. Very well put. No disrespect. I left you because my dog was chasing a squirrel. I hope there was no disrespect.
I don't judge, my friend. I don't judge.
Yeah. No, of course you don't. By the way, one of the
before.
Yeah, I understand, but this was not. Don't take this one personally. One other thing that I wanted to kind of agree with you. When you watch the first 3 weeks of NFL football, every stadium is packed, and whether it's the vaccination or the masking or whatever, and there's a lot of less. Assuming no super spreading, and I don't think that's happening, there's a lot less conversation about what's happening with COVID. I think people are getting, as you said, very well put, much more comfortable that we're returning to normal, whether we are or not. It's a perception, and I totally agree with you as far as that perception. Jenna, give us your perspective on the Dodgers and Oklahoma City. You've been traveling the country fact-finding recently. How does that sound? So,
a lot of facts.
Is that okay?
Facts,
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think a couple things that just from a closing standpoint, I think that coming out of this, and I agree with Kim. I don't think we're out of it, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. We have, I think, really taken a step back and really thought about and reevaluated how we define success. And that was an important exercise for us to go through because, in a typical year, we might have 26 or 27 sellouts. And, going into this year, we couldn't evaluate success in that same way. So going into this season, the one outcome of that we found is that we didn't have as many sellouts, but our average ticket price was up. And so we were able to go and get some small wins and some larger wins along the way that helped us still continue to feel like we were making a lot of progress. And I think that, everyone just got really burnt out for trying to predict, which I guess my crystal ball is just as foggy as yours, because, after a while, we just had to look at each other and say, look, no one has all of the information, so we'll make the best decision for the right reasons, and then we deal with the outcomes after that. And that really allowed us to move forward and come up with some really creative and flexible kind of directions.
Yeah, well put in all material ways. Ken Young, as usual, your cleanup. So you have a lot of perspective on your franchises. You've been around longer than most. So give us your kind of a 30,000-foot assessment of where we are, where we're going.
Well, that's true. I have been around longer than most. You know what, Rick? I think the two words I used from I'd say last February, as we were talking about hopefully starting the season, was flexible and fluid. I kept telling my staffs, I said, just need to be flexible and fluid. You don't know what's going to happen from hour to hour. And so they did a great job of that. And I think all over baseball we did. The other thing we learned, relationships with our sponsors, advertisers, season ticket holders. I venture to say every team on this call probably, even though they offered refunds to everybody, probably got to keep close to 90% of their revenues from 2020, which certainly helped the working capital a little bit. Didn't help us maybe this year, but the fact is kept us going well. And those relationships are why those people let us keep those funds. That was a couple of the things. And then the other things as far as learning, boy, and I think Jenna just said it, higher ticket revenue in that the average ticket was much higher. Per caps on both food and beverage and merchandise, much, much higher. And so all of us made out well compared to the previous times. And I am bullish on minor league baseball. I think that we get people back into our parks next year. We get the corporate community back. And I think things are looking positive for us for the future.
Well, certainly a great way to end this part of the conversation. Michael Wall of Council Foley, actively involved in a lot of minor league baseball stuff. Give us your overall perspective of what you just heard.
Well, thanks, Rick. I came into this call not knowing what to expect. Much of the media that I've seen about this new paradigm of Major League Baseball's ownership of minor league baseball has been somewhat negative, as heavy-handed, intrusive. But from what I see, there's a lot of reason for optimism from what I've heard from these speakers. The third renaissance in facilities and continuing to provide safe, clean fun on a consistent basis. There's a reason why minor league baseball continues to be loved, and I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. I congratulate you on completing your first season under this new paradigm. As you assess how your clubs did after this first season, we hope to be a resource for you. We as a firm hope to be a resource for you. We will get back to you with a recording of this session so that you can digest it further. And we will solicit your interest in continuing this conversation, because I think there's plenty more to talk about. We've had a really good cross section here of AAA, AA, and low and high single A. And thank you for participating. And I hope that we can continue this conversation and that we can help you confront your challenges down the road.
As usual, Michael, right on point. Let me conclude by giving you some perspective. It'll be short because you guys stole the show as well. You should. We had a couple of words that Ken threw out. I would add a few. Obviously, flexible and fluid are very important as well. But the idea of being tenacious, being entrepreneurial, being creative, and survivalistic You all have come through what we said earlier is an incredible perfect storm. And you not only have survived, but you've thrived. And one of the reasons is because you're certainly more willing than most in any sports industry to admit what you don't know and to share best practices. This hopefully will be the first of a few. We'd like to help provide some raw material that will help in the sharing, economic impact, stadium issues, community issues. We've got a great COVID tracker that we can send around. There's a lot of things that we can benefit from and vice versa. But most important, congratulations on getting through the season, continuing the historic tradition of minor league baseball, putting up with my kind of interruption in the middle of this. I saw how excited you were when we froze and how disappointed you were when we came back. We'll deal with that. Really do appreciate it. Bob Dupay, thank you for your wisdom, Foley lawyers as well. And most importantly, Ken, Kim, Sam, Jenna, and attendees, thank you very much. Speak with you all soon. Thanks for coming.